our favorite things, staff picks from the permanent collection. I'm Bryon Chambers, head of education, and I'm joined by two of my favorite colleagues, especially when it comes to geeking out about art. And I think today is going to be exciting. However, when I was approached about this topic, I said, now, Elizabeth, you know I have two rules. And Sue Francis is in the audience today. Sue is one of our longest-serving docents of all time. She actually gave tours before this building existed as the museum at the fairgrounds. And Sue knows that there are two questions that you never answer when giving tours. What's the most expensive piece in the collection? For obvious reasons, including law. And then the second is, what is your favorite? And it was because I found that question incredibly powerful when you're giving a tour, usually with school children. And if you say what your favorite thing is, that could have great weight, great influence. And so instead, I always encouraged our docents and myself to pivot that into what I'm most curious about or what I'm learning right now. And I'm breaking those rules today. Kinda, yes and no. Those selections that I have really speak to that journey, what I was curious about at that time, or what we had to learn. And we're starting today with familiar favorites, then we'll go to things that are in the vault, and then we have what we kind of titled bizarre bonuses. Yeah. And so here's my first selection, and instead of me giving introductions for everyone on the panel, a little bit about ourselves. I started here back in 2005 as a server in the cafe while I was in grad school for art history. Then I accepted an internship in the education department, and many years later, I'm on this stage with you today. But when I started, Blue Electric by Tom Downing, it was created in 1962, was one of the most confusing objects we had on view, and it was always on view in a gallery of hard-edge geometric abstraction, also maybe paired with some more painterly abstraction. All of it came from our Washington Gallery of Modern Art collection, and I didn't know what the WGMA was when I started. Many had no reason to because it only existed for about 8 years in the DC area. And that gallery, its sole intention was to showcase contemporary art that was happening in DC, and it ended up with a small collection of painterly abstraction from that second generation of what was happening in New York. This museum in Oklahoma City purchased that entire collection in 1968. And there are some key major works that we have in our collection from that purchase, including this one. It's really large, not too much smaller than what's projected here. You can shave off a couple of feet. But the bizarre thing about it is what artists were doing. They had a new paint that was plastic-based, and they didn't know how to use it. Tom Downing, along with Gene Davis and the other Washington color painters, were experimenting with this new paint. It has a branded name, but you could think of it as acrylic. Fast drying, you could layer quickly. And they knew oil paint, watercolors, and experimenting with this new fast drying paint. Tom Downing used unprimed canvases, and I'm not sure if you can see in this reproduction in this photograph, but there are little drips of blue and red across the canvas, but for the most part, there are multiple shades of blue and that red, and the canvas is unprimed. Like if you buy a ready-made canvas today, it feels kind of waxy. This feels just like cloth. I've never touched it, but you can imagine. I really haven't, I promise. He's an art handler, highly trained, and has touched it. And the other thing about staring at this work of art, this large painting, is when you're on a tour and look at it, it's filling your entire field of vision. And then something else starts to happen. And I didn't realize this concept until this work of art, plastic space. You may have heard of perspective, where an artist has a horizon line and it creates an illusion of distance on a flat surface. Well, this one starts to move too. Certain colors come closer, other colors start to recede. And for something that I had no coursework, nothing to prepare me to understand or appreciate this work, this became one of the curiosities that ended up being one of my favorites. Is that fair to say, Sue? Thank you. And now we're going on to our next selection and hear a little bit more about Randall.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining us. My name is Randall Barnes. I'm the installation design manager here at the Oklahoma City Museum of Art. I've been an employee here in the exhibitions department as an art handler and preparator since 2015. And this is my ninth year, I think. Ninth year, yeah. And this piece by Kehinde Wiley, Jacob de Graaf, or Jacob de Graaf, is one of my favorite pieces in the galleries that's always out and in our collection. It's my favorite because when I was going through art school, as we learn about things, I find out about Kehinde Wiley. His work is amazing. He has a huge studio of people that work for him across multiple continents. He has a studio in Nigeria, I believe, a studio in Beijing. Yeah. I just need to hold it closer. A studio in Beijing, a studio in Nigeria. He's this sort of rock star artist that I kind of learn about that's still living. And then we get to have this huge exhibit of his that takes up multiple floors, and there's tons of work. And up close, this stuff is just so luscious and detail oriented. And then just the context of the work and the work itself. With a guy from Ferguson, Missouri, after all of the things that have happened in the last 10 years around police violence and racial conversations, and what it means for the art museum to put its money where its mouth is in a way, and purchase a work that is important and significant, and not just a Kehinde Wiley work, but a significant Kehinde Wiley work. And for me, I just appreciate all of that. And being a part of the Kehinde Wiley exhibition, seeing it in the gallery every day, seeing tours around it, people conversating with it, it engages more members or guests than a lot of works in the museum. And it's for me, that's why it's a really great piece. It's captivating. It's important as a piece for the museum and for our city to have, and so that's why I like it. It's one of my favorite pieces for that.
Thank you, Randall.
Yeah.
For a newer acquisition, it's now a key work. It's almost a stop on every tour that you ever experience in this museum. Next, Kristen, your selection.
Hi, my name is Kristen Pignuolo, and I'm the curatorial assistant here. I started almost a year ago. I think I'm a week and a half out from my year anniversary. And for my pick, I chose Chado by Karen Lamont. From my understanding, this is a visitor favorite, and we have it currently on view on the 3rd floor. My art historical background is actually in decorative arts. So I spend a lot more time with works of different mediums like glass, ceramic, pieces of furniture, and things like that, as opposed to painting and works on paper. So what I really love about this work is how Karen Lamont plays with the materiality of the sculpture itself. This is actually a part of a series called The Floating World, in which she cast this sculpture in 4 different mediums. This one is cast glass. Then the other 3 are rusted iron, bronze, and celadon glazed ceramic. And I love that with each of the different pieces, you can really experience how the work changes based off of what material it is made in. This one I absolutely love because you kind of get this ephemerality with the haziness of the cast glass, but you still get the impressions of the wearer's body. And I got into this line of work so that I could touch the art. And if you get really close, which I am fortunate enough to do, you can look inside and see how the body has impacted the interior of the piece, not just the exterior. So it was a really special experience to get to experience and also work with this piece.
And then the next slide, Kristen, is also yours. Please tell us more why you selected this one. And actually, we asked many of you if you had a work that was your favorite and wanted to discuss and why, and I believe this came from the audience.
Yes, so we were requested to talk about a work that was donated by a man named Charles Tillman, and this is one of them. And this is a work on paper. It's a print called Sacrifice of a Bull Before a Statue of Jupiter by Diana Mantuana. And I'll say, this has such an interesting story behind it. It's less about the piece itself, but about the engraver. So Diana Mantuana was a 16th century female printmaker in Italy, and she's actually the first recorded woman printmaker in early modern Europe.
That's the secret that you've been
That was
holding.
the secret I was keeping from you.
We had a rehearsal yesterday, and she's like, I'm not going to tell you, but I found something amazing to share.
Yes. What I learned was her father was a printmaker, and she was not allowed to actually become an official apprentice, which is how people kind of got into the art business back in the day in early modern Europe. But her father taught her and her sisters how to work in a printmaking capacity, and she was the first woman to actually make it her career, and she moved to Rome and actually made engravings for one of Giorgio Vasari's books. It was just such a delight when I found this out, and actually the Philadelphia Museum of Art is currently doing an exhibition on her work.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, this is why I love these two colleagues so much, is because I actually office across from Kristen. Randall has his own cubby hole back in the design studio, but it's not uncommon for one of us to scream, yell, or make some emphatic noise. Guess what I just learned? And she's been holding that one a secret. Next, Randall, tell us some more about what we see and why you chose this.
Yeah. Before I talk about this Andy Goldsworthy piece, I'm going to go back to the Chotto and the crazy facts that we learn. When Preston Singletary was here, who's the artist with the current exhibit that we have, in talking to him, he has worked with Karen Lamont before, and Karen Lamont worked in the Czech Republic on this because it was the only place you could do cast lead glass. But this piece took 9 months to cool down. So they cast it, and then they put it in a thing called an annealer, which incrementally drops the temperature. But it took 9 months before they could even open the piece to look to see if it had worked. And that's that. Yeah, I don't know. It's like a baby. It's like a little baby.
When we talk to school kids, we talk, it's a baby. Yeah. or when I talk to school kids, it's your entire school year.
Or school year, yeah. That's a baby. That's a whole baby.
But yeah, it took Karen, and we all loved this because we have our Chihuly collection, and when this was acquired, it was our 10th anniversary in this building in 2012. And our museum organized an exhibition called Fusion: A New Century of Glass, showcasing or featuring how contemporary artists are working in the medium And this gallery had 3 of these objects in the series, all glass, but she works in multiple mediums. But we purchased this work for our collection, and it was the first expansion of our Studio Glass collection. I give a tour of Studio Glass at 2 o'clock today, if anyone else is interested in joining. But back to Andy Goldsworthy.
Yeah, okay, so Andy Goldsworthy. This is not a picture or a painting or a photograph. It's a video, and it is Andy Goldsworthy, who usually does these site-specific installations, like in a forest or on a beach. He's built a giant, like, 30-yard spiral in the ocean with stones, where he just stacks stones up, or he has all these things. But this video is him crawling through a hedge in front of the sea at dawn, and the little dark spot in the middle is him halfway through the hedge crawling across. So his daughter is filming it, actually, and so I really just love this piece because it's absurd. It's like a man just crawling through the hedges, and it's like man versus nature, but also just a guy crawling through a hedge for art, and that's sick. It's just so great. And then he's there with his daughter, and his daughter, I think he's like 55, almost 60 at this point. I think he's almost 70 now. So it's like his grown daughter and him just going to make a piece of art. And at this time, he's like a world famous artist, so it's just the whole thing to me is amazing. This is on a video on our second landing outside the George O'Keeffe exhibit at the moment, and my office connects to there via the vault, and so I come out of there in front of this piece a lot and find people just kind of dumbfounded, like, what the hell is going on here? And when they have that expression on their face, I always make a point to say that this is one of my favorite pieces in the collection, and that they should stay for the whole thing. And then they usually do. And so I just love all parts of that, all the interactions, from my experiences with it to probably his experiences with it, the familial part of it, the absurd part of it, the beauty of the sunrise and the sea, and just that's why it's one of my favorite pieces.
There's something about timing and watching, a pleasure for us, when we get to observe visitors interacting with art. Most of the time, we're on a tour, or you're going through the gallery for a preview, or you're experiencing an exhibition for the first time. And there is something about this Goldsworthy piece that is always refreshing to see visitors just absorbed, seated on a bench and going for minutes, watching the entire thing. And anytime we get to see that moment where someone disappears into the art, it's a magical moment. The next one is my selection, and it's Cows in a Field. No, it's called The Coming Storm, George Ennis. And it's something that I dismissed, did not capture my attention when I first met this. And it's large. I think it's 9 feet, and it's one of our largest paintings in the collection, on view now on the second floor.
It's like 300 pounds.
300 pounds?
It's heavy. Yeah, it's really heavy.
The other things that were hooks for me to get me thinking more about the artist and why our painting is so special is he painted this in less than 2 hours. It's one of the largest paintings in the collection and probably the quickest finished. However, there is enough evidence for us Michael, please make this happen. And our board leadership is here too, Suzette. I want to scan this work because supposedly Mount Washington is underneath. And he repainted this. And this painting is his last of about 30 coming storm subject matter. And it was in his estate. When he died in Scotland, he's an American artist, but was in Scotland with his son, and apparently, according to accounts of his death, He was observing a beautiful sunset and said, "My God, how beautiful," and dropped dead. And this was the painting that was the last coming storm in his estate of the many that exist in collections around the world. And it's painted in less than 2 hours. That amazing story. And when we take school groups through, or any group, I'll stop saying school groups, any group through, it's something that you could quickly dismiss. There's even a joke about the birds in the sky that look more like bird poop than birds, because it was so quickly done. It's a sense of totalism, a sense of giving us a feeling, and it's become. It's really hard for me to say a favorite, but that's what it is. It's something that I have connected with, and I've seen so many people approach this and dismiss it, and then after just a little bit of looking and a little bit more information, have a stronger connection with it.
I know that when we were talking about our favorite works when we met up for this event, not to put you on blast, Randall, but this has caused a little bit of beef. Yeah. Ha ha ha. Care to elaborate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of this painting, but the 2-hour thing has changed a little bit of my perception of it. I just found that out this week. But yeah, I don't know.
So
That does change a little bit where I'm like, damn, all right.
okay.
It's crazy what context does.
So even for us, a little bit more information, and then all of a sudden these new hooks are happening. And that continues. So we're going to dive now into the vault. Things that are rarely on view. A couple of my selections were on view for one time and have not come back since, including Loose Leaf Notebook Drawings, Box 13, Group 4, by Richard Tuttle. Yes, this is wide-ruled notebook paper for students with a couple of washes of watercolor. There's more. Another one. It's in the same series, and again, I was not prepared in my education to appreciate this, and it took time. It took understanding. This came to the museum because of a special story about the collectors, Herb and Dorothy Vogel. Both have passed away, but we were selected as the institution to receive 50 works for 50 states from their collection. It was initiated by the National Gallery of Art, and Herb and Dorothy Vogel they lived in Manhattan. I learned this week that Herb actually took art history classes from Erwin Panofsky, one of the big names of early 20th century art history.
He was a mailman too, right?
What was that?
Herb was he?
Yeah,
was he a mailman?
The other fun story about these
Because they live in Manhattan, but they're not
not wealthy.
millionaires in Manhattan.
I should have led with that.
Rent-controlled Manhattan.
She was a librarian and he was a postal clerk. So they may have this incredible collection, but their lives were humble. So humble that it gave panic attacks to every person responsible for pulling out this collection from their apartment, which was in stacks. It was near aquariums with their cats walking on it. And as all of this was unloaded from their house and properly condition reported, cataloged, and sorted by the National Gallery, even the National Gallery, our nation's great repository, said, this is too much for us. And that's why they started the initiative of 50 Works for 50 States. Other fun things about this. When you see it, it really is notebook paper with watercolor on it. And it has a little texture to it. There's a little bit of it came home in a backpack experience. And Richard Tuttle was right in the middle. Like, there are tons of isms associated with him, post-minimalism or other things that he tried to initiate, but he was right in the middle, art historically, in American art, right in the center of it all, pushing boundaries of what is art. That is my third rule, probably, Sue. I will not tell anyone what is and what is not art. I do not get in the game of connoisseurship where this is superior or inferior. If anything, my job is to help each viewer connect with an object in any way possible. I'm always looking for a way to make that hook. So this has not been on view since we received that donation, and it may be time to make an appearance, Michael. I'm gonna get in trouble for that later. Next, Kristen.
This is one of the works, I would say, when I started kind of exploring our collection on the museum's database of all of our objects that really caught my eye. It is by an artist named Rafael Coronel, and he's a member of a group of artists in Mexico in the mid-20th century that was a part of what is called the Rupture generation. This is a group of artists following the Mexican muralists, and he actually is the son-in-law of Diego Rivera, one of the biggest names of the Mexican muralists. And what this Rupture generation was doing was blending art historical references of like the old masters from Europe with everyday life in Mexico at the time. And for me, I'm much more familiar with early modern European works. That's kind of like the baseline of my art historical knowledge. And I can totally see here with the definition and the detail of this sleeping man's face, but also the haziness of his body and kind of a connection almost to the portraits of an old master like Titian, but then you've got this really interesting color palette that reminds me of other Baroque artists. I also just love the shape of him. He is an absolute unit of a man. He's a mountain man. He's a mountain of a man. It's just one that kind of delights me every time I come across it, and I really want to put it out. I want to put something together to get it out there. I love the amount of detail he puts into people's faces.
It has, and when we do formal analysis, we talk about the composition. This is a pyramidal shape, and it has that kind of form to it. It may not be the most flattering or idealistic view, but there's something about seeing this in person that checks all of those boxes in every category or every description that you named, but it also breaks rules. And
Yes.
there's something powerful about it. I'm so glad you selected this one.
Thank you.
Now, next.
Okay, so this is a woodcut print by Lionel Feininger, and this is one of my favorite artists. He's an American working in Germany in the 1920s. He doesn't speak German. He is basically there to learn German Expressionism and has to go to class or school, wherever he's going every day, and work and not really be able to talk to anyone, and he's just kind of working. And so I discovered this artist through a movie, actually, called Bunraku, which is about a samurai with no sword and a cowboy with no gun. But all of the set design and graphics in the movie are based off of Lionel Feininger paintings. And these paintings and prints would go on to inspire my own work when I was in school. And then I think also there's like a correlation between Dole Reed, which is he ran the Oklahoma State University art department where I went to school for some time in like the 30s, I believe. I'll bring him up later. But for me, this piece, it's got personal connection, the medium connection. I make prints also, or have made prints, and really enjoy carving wood blocks and linoleum. And so this just has all the art history significance for me as like a person, and it's great too. This piece, I don't think I've ever seen it out. It's in our vault. It's on a rack that I walk by, that's by the door, and sometimes we're like going through these racks looking at pieces, sometimes to find out if they're gonna go in an exhibit, or sometimes you need a break and you just go in the vault. Not all of us get to do that, only some of us get to do that, but to really, there's so many amazing works in the vault. There's like 5,000 works on paper. There's all these pieces that never come out, and to be able to have access to them and see them sort of in this role that I have, and not everyone at the museum even has the ability to get in there. I'm just like super appreciative, and to like these little masterpieces are just in there, and to like literally find them looking through things just to like look and see what we have is like you're just kind of blown away. You're like, what? Like, oh my god, like why is this just here?
Will you help us, Randall?
Yeah.
Because in this presentation, everything is the same size, and we
okay.
know that's untrue. So will you
Yeah.
describe scale?
So this piece is like maybe 16 by 16.
Okay.
And then it's framed in a piece that's like 30 inches tall by like 20 inches wide or 15 inches wide. So this is a small piece. It's like 16 by 16. It's a wood block. It was probably literally a piece of wood. I don't know that this is like there wasn't, I don't know in the 20s if they were like using Japanese wood blocks from Japan. You know, this could have been just like a piece of lumber. 16 by 16. This guy, I don't know, I just really like it. He's using this German expressionism. He's kind of just the hard lines, the angles, the three little houses there, the sun. I love what's going on here. The mark making, the tonal variety. When I was learning printmaking, that was always this thing. Our printmaking professor, he would be like, you need a variety in mark making and you need tonal variety. And then if you didn't have those things, he was just like, yeah, it's all right, you know. Maybe some more mark making.
We have about 5,000 objects in our collection,
Yeah.
and the great majority of them are works on paper. And what that means for all of us is that we don't get to see the majority of our collection most of the time because it has to rest in cold, flat, dark storage. It can only be on view for 13 or 15 weeks, and then 3 times that amount of rest. So some objects we can have on view all the time, like studio glass, and other things like this, a work on paper, has to rest most of its life. Kristen, were you going to say something?
I was just going to bring up that Randall has this knowledge and expertise about printmaking because he's a printmaker and he went to school for it. So it's really cool. You've got that connection.
Yeah, and that's really, this piece, it's all just personal interest, really. Just, my connection to it, and that's why I like it.
Next, Kristen, you introduced this work to me.
Yes. You two, I don't believe had seen this work. And I was completely unfamiliar with this artist. I believe that she's Swiss, and she's best known for these concentric circles that create this illusion of depth and playing with this interesting like gradations of a single color. But this has a weirdly personal connection for me in my art history journey. So from what I've described, my art historical background is pretty like early modern Europe, decorative arts, stuff like that. Anything like 20th century onward was not my jam at all. So when I took my first art history course in high school, We had an entire day at the end of the semester. I'm from Houston, Texas, and we have some lovely museums there, and we just spent the entire day going to different museums across Houston. And one of them was the Menil Collection, which is best known for its modern art. And we went into the house that houses all of like Cy Twombly's works, and he's an abstract expressionist. And what I love about this work is the center of this painting reminds me of the works I saw in that Cy Twombly house. He did this series called Green Paintings, which is just splashes of green and white paint. And it resembles, like, to me, that was what changed everything for me with modern art. Like, that was a moment where, oh my gosh, it totally clicks in my head. I completely understand why people like this now. To me, it like resembled a swamp. And if anyone's been to Houston, you know it's surprisingly swampy. So being able to see a bit of the landscape that I lived in these works, it made that connection happen, and that connection happened when I saw this piece right here. I absolutely love it. I don't think it's neither of you have seen it, so it's not been on view in quite a while. I just find it absolutely entrancing.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for giving us this program today so we could advocate to have more works on view that are our personal favorites. Next, Randall, something I do want to point out is that we're looking at photographs, reproductions of works of art, and that is an art unto itself. And I do not think this image really truthfully portrays seeing it in person.
I think it's close. It's pretty close. So this painting, for me, this painting, when I don't know, maybe it's maturing, I'm not really sure. When I first started here, I was like, what the hell is this? This painting is trash, abstract art, oh my God. But this painting has been in a lot of exhibits, and it's been installed a lot. And through the years, this is a painting that I've like grown to love, and for several reasons. So I have this personal story with my dad and like animal moles. My dad used to be like, we had a really nice yard, but we always had moles, and it was because we had a nice yard. And so like my adolescence was like these memories of my dad like waging war on these mole holes. And this has gone on to like, I still make work about moles and my dad. And this work like reminds me of mole holes, and it reminds me of like a cross section of a mole hole, and like you would just be able to see the mole crawl through this red orange like tunnel, and so that there's like these ongoings. And I know that's not what this painting is. But this painting is like a landscape painting. Lawrence Calzagano, he worked near Big Sur in California, and he did these paintings. And this is a painting that I've, at first sight, absolutely was like black and brown with this. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I guess it's like a good composition. But over the 10 years of working here, I absolutely love this painting. I get excited when it's going out on view. I love to just stand in front of it and look at it. It's just brown and black with these awesome, warm, as the title suggests, earthbound. And for me, this is either sunrise or like the inside of the earth and the action and activity that's happening in the core of the earth. And the idea of the inner journey and a catabasis and what that represents, and going into the earth and coming out of the earth. And I don't know if all of that is on this painting, but I've certainly put all of that on this painting.
It is for you.
And so, like the earth, or like the hedge crawl, it's like the same sort of composition. And to me, it's just like right to left through the tunnel.
And that was kind of tongue-in-cheek when I said that. It is to you. But we have the strong division of works that are representational or non-representational, objective or non-objective. But after spending years with objects that are declared art, all of a sudden there are narratives about our own lives and identity that are wrapped up in these objects. And that's why I allow myself to have affinity for works of art. I'm still borderline, not quite able to say favorite. This next work is Tendon on Palette by Jill Downen, my selection. And it's because of the memory I have of this exhibition. It is a sculpture of plaster, and it really is on a palette. And was anyone here and saw this installation? Anybody in the audience? I know at least 2, 3. It was 2011, 2012 on the 3rd floor, and Jill Downen had, this is the object that we acquired from that exhibition because it was the most stable object. It didn't have this ephemeral quality. Other objects in the exhibition had like Mod Podge plaster on canvases that were draped on some kind of structure, and throughout the life of the exhibition, it sagged. When you saw it in the beginning, it was pretty straight. By the end of the exhibition, everything was draped over. For a museum, that is a conservation nightmare. So we chose something a little more shelf-stable. And the other thing, behind this, you really can't tell, but in our third floor galleries, you can recognize the hardwood floor. That's our curved wall in that gallery space. But in between, behind in that mid-ground of the photograph, there is just dusting of plaster. And it is spilled over the entire wall length. And it created this illusion of the wall melding into the wood. So there wasn't this hard edge line any longer. It was, people could step in it. So every morning, the prep crew, when they do their gallery rotations to make sure all the lights work and everything's as it should be, they'd have to go through and gently dust and erase any footprints, hard edge lines, or someone stepping on it. But this experience, I love that we collected an object from every exhibition from this New Frontier series, because they're some of the most, it just requires context. It requires stories. It requires someone who experienced it to fill in the blanks. Why this? How did this end up in the collection? And for those of us who experienced this exhibition, it was one of those that just transformed our museum. It transformed a space that we're so familiar with, and you walk in and you're like, gasp, this is our museum. It's very similar to walking into Preston Singletary, Raven in the Box of Daylight today. That's our space. So I just have very fond memories of this exhibition, and this object was part of that. Now on to bizarre bonuses. And the reason why they're bizarre is because we had to come up with a word of how to make this work. And so this is what we chose. Kristen, you're up.
Yes, so this is actually one of the first works when I got to the museum that I kind of worked on. Our previous curator, Catherine, was redoing the permanent collection, and this was in the travel gallery. So I was proofing her labels, and this was one of the works that really called out to me. And it's another one of those aha moments where I didn't really study photography outside of my art history survey courses, especially not street photography. Like Joel Meyerowitz is a street photographer, and this is what street photography is all about. It's about capturing these unique moments that we come across in day-to-day life, living in a city like Paris where a man just falls completely backwards and the reactions that people have to it. It's about capturing this fleeting moment. And I'm so, like, I love this work so much. I was sad when, unfortunately, because it's a photograph, we had to rotate it out so that it could rest. I just love it so much. I feel like it is one of those works that is like a Baroque composition. You have such extreme reactions, like with, I'm not going to imitate it. You can see it up there.
We encourage that in the galleries, by the way.
Yes, please.
Go ahead and kinesthetically take on that pose. For most of my career here at the museum, I was in charge of the docent program. And I recently joined Tori Waldron and our docents, taking a deep dive into this work. It was about 30 minutes. And as you stare, all of a sudden, more things unfold. It's like this single, like, microsecond starts to have, you find evidence of, like, oh, no, it's this, not that. Oh, that person looks like he or she could be helping. But no, actually, you don't have enough evidence to know their intentions or their emotions behind. There's just so many layers. And
my favorite might be the cyclist.
yeah.
Yeah, I think he's my favorite part of it, but also I just recently noticed how bad the traffic is in Paris and the many directions that the cars are going in.
So part of the conversation about that cyclist was he was the most endearing or helpful looking, but by the end of it, he was the person who, only because of the moment this was snapped, who was engaged with that traffic, and it just happened to be his fleeting glance. Mm-hmm. So anyway, long-looking, unpacking it.
Yes, he's the one least equipped to actually help.
To do anything.
Yeah.
And then as we were looking, their foreground, midground, and background, the sequence of events, trying to be a detective about what happened here, it looks like the person with the hammer, for a while he looks guilty. And then you realize that person is not stepping over him uncaringly. He's actually in a different space than the person that fell down. So anyway, this will be on view perhaps in a couple of years, and we can all have this journey again. Next. Kristen, this is also a work by your selection.
I made this, actually.
I'm sorry?
Oh, no, I was making a joke saying that I had made this. I did not. But this is actually currently on view, so people can see it now. This is a work by Thomas Moran, but it's not a typical Thomas Moran. When we think about who Thomas Moran is, and we have other works by him in the collection, he was a part of the Hudson River Valley School, which is a group of artists in America in the 19th century that create these almost golden, idealized landscapes. And this is very different from that. This is when I was going around the galleries for one of my first times here. This was one of the works that really caught my eye, and I absolutely love it. I come back to it when I'm just walking through the galleries. It's a small work. It is 16 by 22, so just a little bit bigger than the Feininger woodcut. And so Moran, in his other works that we have, was working on a much bigger scale, but this one is a lot smaller and intimate, but it still packs a really big punch. It has this really dramatic composition. I love the spouts of steam that you get. There's a lot of action in the work, and I love the color palette so much. It's so different from what Moran was doing at the time.
Our two paintings, also by Moran, I believe two others in the collection. One is a Venetian vedute, or view painting, and it has this hyper-color sunset or sunrise of the Santa Maria Della Salute, the Bacino, the Doge's Palace. It looks like a Vedute. And then another one we have is Toltec Gorge, this boundary area from modern-day New Mexico and Colorado. And it's just this champion waterfall, and you have this sense of awe and wonder about nature and all of its power. And this one is black and white, grayscale, but not lacking any of the power.
You're still
in the other
getting the power of nature through this. And Falls at Toltec Gorge is also on view, so it makes for a really interesting counterpoint.
Yeah. Randall, you have the next two selections.
Okay, so this one, when I think my wife and I first started coming here in like 2011, the New Frontiers series that Bryon was talking about was with the Chato piece. The Chato piece was that glass exhibit was the second, I believe, exhibit that I saw in the museum. And this piece used to be in the gallery a lot and is less so now, but Dole Reed used to be the head of the Oklahoma State University Art Department in like the 30s, like I said, and just from being aware of him from being a student at OSU and the time that he spent in New Mexico and Taos, this was just always a painting that felt like it had an Oklahoma connection in the museum, and I just always really enjoyed that, and then just love the quality of the painting and just the painting itself, and so yeah, that's why it's one of my favorite pieces. There's the Oklahoma connection, the Oklahoma State connection, and it's just like a really great painting. The burgundy and gold here, the two reclining ladies, this like motif throughout art history. Yeah, I just think it's like a great painting.
And
it's a great painting.
It really is. As far as like it consumes you when you walk past it. You may have other intentions, but it captures your gaze. You have to turn back and just take a moment with it. Now, however, this next work, Randall, that you selected, I don't think has ever been on view in this building.
It actually has. So this is the Judgment of Paris. I think it was in The Question of Beauty.
Oh, that's right.
A few years ago, and maybe one more time it's been out. But for me, this painting is it's a lot of things. It's psychedelic. There's an insane amount of detail. This piece is also only like 15 by 20 inches. It's kind of small, but the amount of detail between everything is insane. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say this. If you've done psychedelics, it's a very psychedelic experience where your realities begin to vibrate and blend and merge and be these linear constructs, and all of that is happening in this, and there's like a little joint in the corner, and just the art historical context, and this looks like a Nickelodeon cartoon. I don't know, it's just like...
Yeah, it has that cartoonish hard edge outline.
But it's like this...
It is kind of, it has a feel of a finished product that you started with the instructions, paint by number, and but the title, The Judgment of Paris. Kristen, can you tell me more about that subject?
I can. So this is I am a big Greek mythology nerd, so this is essentially the instigating moment of the Trojan War, where Paris, who is a mortal man, has to choose between three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, who to award the golden apple to say who is the most fair, who is the most beautiful, and he awards it to Aphrodite because she says that he will give her the woman that he desires, which is Helen of Troy. And so this is a work that caught my eye when I went through the collection as well, but I wouldn't call it a favorite of mine. But when we were meeting to choose our works, we kind of dug into it, and I was like, okay, where are the mythological references? Which woman is which goddess. And so I noticed that we've got the shield with, I don't know who that man is, but presumably it's meant to be Athena's shield, which has Medusa's head on it. And then there's an owl next to her, which is an animal associated with Athena, the goddess of wisdom.
Yeah.
There's still fun stuff in it that I like.
So my emphasis for art history was medieval art, and we don't have a medieval collection. All of us have to be generalist, but part of a medieval practice is attributes. You see a symbol so you can unpack that story, because likeness or resemblance is not a possibility. So you look for a symbol that tells you who this person is, and all of a sudden the narrative unfolds. And we had a similar practice with unpacking this painting. What is happening here? Who is who, and what's going down with this story? And you kind of geeked out after he geeked out, and then we all geeked out about it. So one painting that I didn't think was going to be a part of this presentation, this one. One painting that has now become a favorite, this one. Moving on to these are our final two selections, and it's 10:54. You're welcome, Elizabeth. The Sea by Anne Truitt. It is a column. It has a little painted tip that's slightly different. This was donated in honor of Joan Kirkpatrick. We have a painting also by Anne Truitt that they have a relationship and color. But one of my most amazing moments on a school tour happened with this work of art. We had been down in our Seascape gallery on the second floor, and this was in our on our third floor with more non-representational or non-objective works, more painterly abstraction or geometric. It wasn't of something, but we had just spent so much time looking at anything that had to do with anything about the sea. And the kids walked up, and we talked about a few works, and they started asking about this, and we just sat down on it, at it, in a circle around it, and looking up. They knew exactly where they were, what this was, and how it meant to them. They were in the ocean, looking up to the surface, and this rectangular column all of a sudden embodied everything about that experience. It was enough visual reference for them to understand where they were and what they were doing. And Truitt, I didn't have that appreciation for this work, and I didn't know this artist when we acquired it, when it was added to the collection. And I didn't understand any of this. But there are tons of videos of Anne Truitt working with color, thinking about color. She spent a lot of time in her studio making her own pigments. Commercially available pigments, paints were available. That was not part of her practice. She made her own. And there are so many videos of her just talking, stirring, and like little mason jars, making that pigment. If this color is just right or not, is that quite it? I'm unsure. And you were allowed into this very private, intimate moment with her relationship with color. And this entire thing was painted by her, and that color relationship as part of her effort became an exact reference for students in knowing where they were and what they were doing and why this was art. I didn't have to explain any of that to them. It was an aha moment. It was just naturally unfolding in one of the most beautiful occasions for me at this museum. The next one, and this is completely out of context. Was anyone here for Pastries and Poodles by Franco Mondini Ruiz? The exhibition itself was more of a happening. And when I say art happening, you can look that up later, but it was an event. It was an experience. And the artist was on site. It was like we were at a flea market. It was like we were at some kind of rapid fire sale. There was a party. We had drinks in the galleries, maybe the only occasion, but it was just his galleries. And this cabinet is something we've created since. The original context, let me go to this next slide. Franco, when he arrived in Oklahoma City, the first thing he did was go to flea markets, go to antique malls, and start buying kitsch items. And then he started his artistic process of marrying random things, like something that looked like a cigarette butt to a horse's mouth, or that brie cheese on the top right with the elephant. All of that is like ceramic sculpture or kitsch items. He just married these objects together, and he did rapid fire paintings on ready-made canvases, something you would buy in bulk for a student classroom, and created this entire experience. Museums, we have some hard-edge boundaries, arm's length distance from the art market, art world. We don't get involved with appraisals or authentications. There are many reasons for this, but this became performance art. Franco also participated in the Whitney Biennial, where he just set up a vendor cart and started selling paintings that he would just do and just give to you. There's a couple of pictures from the catalog where it's like 100 paintings for $5,000, a $20,000 value. All of it was an experience. You had to be there. You had to be with the artist, see the exhibition. It was all about that context at that moment in time. But from that series, we always purchased something. And what we purchased was on an entire table, under glass, or under a vitrine. And since then, we've had to think about, how are we going to display this? And how do we communicate the story of this object and experience? And it doesn't always work. It will never replicate that original experience. And I think that's where we end up at the end, because it's about you and your experience with that object, or the memories and the things that you bring to that moment. That's art as experience. Kristen?
We fought over who was going to present the Mondini Ruiz. I have none of that context. I loved these works because of the way that they combine like kitsch and decorative arts. It feels so absurd, so that's what really drew me to it. But I love your story and talking about the experience of having Mondini Ruiz in the galleries, and I think we should invite him back. He was quite a character from what I hear.
Yeah. Okay, now it's question times, and it's 11:01. I've gone too long. Once again, I have a reputation for going over, and the last time I was a part of a fellow program, it was at least 20 minutes overtime. Sorry, Elizabeth, once again. But we want to give you moments to ask questions of us. Anyone? Please.
Do you buy a piece of every exhibit that you bring in?
No.
How does that work?
No, we do not. However, there are a couple of fun things I think we can share now. For example, with Preston Singletary, Raven and the Box of Daylight, we did commission the artist because we have such a substantial collection of studio glass, and we did not have him represented in our collection. There are some pieces coming, and your fellow members, the purpose of this membership level is to have some insider knowledge. We just saw the photos of our finished piece, and it should be here any moment now. And I think there are 2 total. One's here already. So this new front...
They're not in this exhibit.
No. Newly created pieces by the artist that will be a part of our permanent collection. New Frontiers was a series that we had in the past of contemporary art. This is before our friends at Oklahoma Contemporary opened in their downtown location, and we were trying to showcase and feature art of our time. Chado, fusion, celebrating how artists were working with contemporary artists were working in that medium today. So that series, we selected one object from every exhibition to purchase. That's not always the case, but when we can, there's a great motivation behind it. For example, Kehinde Wiley and A New Republic, that exhibition was organized by the Brooklyn Museum, and we wanted a work of his in our collection. It didn't come from that exhibition, it came from a series later commissioned by another museum, and that object, that painting became a part of our collection. So, not always do we purchase an object, but that's usually a moment of motivation for us. When we see our audiences connect with something, as a reminder, we didn't own the Chihuly collection when we opened in 2002. We purchased that a year or so after, and there was no reason for us to buy it when we first opened. That wasn't a thought, and then all of a sudden, we have to. So something about seeing our audiences have experiences with these objects or exhibitions creates a reason for our permanent collection to develop and parallel those experiences with our audiences. Did that answer your question? Great. Others? Please.
So you mentioned studio glass.
Yeah.
Is there another type of studio or another type of glass?
Kristen, you want to take this one because of the decorative arts
Sure.
background?
So the question was, we mentioned studio glass. Are there other types of glass? When we say studio glass, that refers to a specific movement that started in the 1960s.
1962.
Yeah, thank you. 1962, where there were these glass artists. I mean, before this, the history of glass is one that is thousands of years old, and it's one that mostly comes from a decorative perspective or a utility perspective. But 1962, we have artists like Harvey K. Littleton who are studying, there's this blending of American glass makers who are beginning to work with glass in a way that is significantly different from what they had been doing previously, in kind of glass becoming more of an art object itself. And so we get the development of the Pilchuck School of Glass with that was co-founded by Chihuly in the Pacific Northwest. And there's also this dialogue with the American glassmakers bringing over Italian masters from Venice to teach those techniques, but utilizing them in a completely different way. So,
our colleagues at the Sam Noble Museum in Norman at OU, there's ancient Roman glass in their collection, and it's over 2,000 years old. And if I plugged in the very beginning, at 2 o'clock today, you're welcome to join me on our studio glass art tour of Chihuly, Preston Singletary, and our rose glass collection. Other questions? Please.
You mentioned on the Paris photograph something about photographs having to rest. What does that mean?
The question is?
the question is, when I was discussing the Paris photograph, that photographs have to rest and what that refers to. So that refers to the fact that when a photograph is out, a photograph or a work on paper is an object that is a lot more susceptible to light damage than other works of art like a painting or a piece of glass. So in order to slow that damage down, let's say we have a work on paper out for 3 months, then ideally we would want that object to go back and rest. And by rest, we mean in a temperature-controlled, humidity-controlled environment in the dark that is not disturbed for 9 months. We want to at least triple that amount of time, because this is something I'm actually very interested in, is every work of art that we engage with is actively kind of decaying in front of our eyes in real time, just incredibly slowly. Certain kinds of art, like works on paper or photographs, do it at a lot faster rate than others. So we want to make sure that we have these objects for as long as we possibly can, and that is what it refers to.
Yeah, you may hear us say conservation more than restoration, It's just like having a construction piece of paper in an elementary classroom. And maybe part of it was tucked behind a book and the other part was exposed to the light and it faded over time. With a collection that is a majority works on paper, including photography, we have particular challenges in conserving that collection for as long as possible.
There is currently on view in Magnificent Beauty on the second floor, there's a Polaroid included that we had to get kind of a special piece from the O'Keeffe Museum to protect it because a Polaroid is even more unstable and damaged by light. That even when all the lights are off in the museum, when no one is here, we have to have that piece covered so that there will be, to limit the light damage as much as possible. Before we had like a piece of like cardboard over it, covering it, essentially.
Other questions? Well, oh, please.
On some of the titles, it says after, and then it gives another name. What's after and this other name?
That's on the Judgment of Paris piece. So it would say after Peter Paul Rubens, or Peter Paul Rubens after. So Ernest Ruckel took a Peter Paul Rubens painting, probably the Judgment of Paris painting that Rubens did, and then copies the composition, which is like a art practice for artists and painters that goes on. You look at the masters, and you copy it to try to work on your skill and technique. And so this is just, while it looks like a Nickelodeon cartoon, it's sort of based off of the Rubens painting. So I would imagine like even there's probably symbols added, but the composition is the Rubens painting. Maybe even the body shapes, body types are Rubenesque. And then you get some of the details that are
Intentionally in the manner of.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, it was also with the Diana Mantuana piece at the very beginning, because that was because the sacrifice of the bull in front of a statue of Jupiter, specifically a lot of prints will have this, and that's because Diana Mantuana was the person who was engraved it, who made the print version, but it was actually created, I believe, like that composition, like Randall was saying, that was taken after a painting by Giulio Romano, I believe.
And some of that, like what Kristen's talking about, is this engraving's made of it because in the 16th century, not everyone can go see the painting, and so with printing presses and Gutenberg, the engraving is a way to then show, like, here the painting. This is the painting. Come and see it, or here's what the painting is about.
Or like it'll be in a text and it'll be referenced. And
Your question probably sparked a future fellow program topic. And on that note, I have to wrap things up and say thank you. Thank you for your generous support of the museum. Thank you for being a fellow member. I encourage you to visit our exhibitions, our galleries today if you haven't seen Preston Singletary. It closes on April 28th, the end of this month. If you haven't seen Magnificent Beauty on the second floor featuring Georgia O'Keeffe and Imogen Cunningham, and also this summer, the word is out. We are hosting Edith Head, Hollywood's costume designer. You can purchase or register for programs, see everything that's happening with that exhibition. Thank you.